welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are new here, my name is Ore. I am a pharmacist living and working in Ontario, Canada. I'm originally from the UK, so I share my experience as a UK qualified pharmacist moving to Canada, and I just kind of share lifestyle, what it's like to live and work in Canada. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for joining. I love when you guys always come back. I love your comments, I love your emails, I love the DMs I get on Instagram from you guys. So thank you. I super appreciate it. A lot of you kind of really loved the previous video where I shared about finances and money, how much pharmacists earn in North America generally. This is a series, so for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking all about money as it relates to relocation. I'm just kind of sharing general knowledge, and I think it's important for you guys to have an idea of some of those things and go back and do further research, whether that is with an official financial consultant or someone who can help you better in that area. So a lot of you have been sending questions and stuff along, and I've added some of those questions and details to some of the videos and topics that I'm going to be sharing on. Today we're going to focus on the next step. Okay, so you've decided what country you want to move to, you have done your research as it pertains to how much pharmacists earn in the country you decided to go to, or the state or province you decided to go to. Now you're like, what's the next step? What are the other things I need to think about before moving? So we're going to talk about all those things. Some of those things consist of annual leave. We'll talk a bit about taxes. We'll talk about home affordability. We'll talk about all those great things that kind of incorporate and make up this massive dream of moving and being in a new country. The thing I always say and have always said on my Instagram is there's no perfect country. Canada has its pros, America has its pros, England has its pros, but they all also have their cons. There are advantages and disadvantages to any move that you make. So no country is going to fit every single box that you wish to have. But I'm hoping that these videos will help you to kind of see some of the benefits of living in America, North America, and compare it to the lifestyle that you currently have in the UK. Does it really fit? Is it where you want to go? And yes, the UK is a great place. It's home for me. It's where I grew up. But at the same time, looking at your growth and your future and the things that you really desire for yourself, does the environment, the country, location that you currently live in, does it serve that purpose and those dreams? Those are some of the things I want you to really think about. And the biggest questions that people have been asking me is annual leave, vacation time. Well, you know, in North America, pharmacists or doctors, whatever, earn a lot of money, but do they get enough vacation time? On average, vacation time in North America is about 2 weeks. Yes, it is trash, absolute nonsense, absolutely ridiculous. For me, thinking of it, and this is just my opinion, there is kind of no science background to this, but I feel that the fact that there's such a low vacation time period in North America actually contributes to a lot of the health and mental health risks that there are out there. I think people do overwork themselves in North America in comparison to England. I've seen that a lot. Me as a person, and I said this again before many times, when I moved to North America, I told myself that I was going to try as best as I can to maintain the lifestyle I had in England. So when I say lifestyle, I mean maintain the amount of time off, the rest time I give myself, because I'm not wired like you North Americans, unfortunately. I am wired as a European. So that means that I'm used to taking regular vacations. I'm used to having rest days and things like that from work, because it allows me to be better and more effective in my career. One of the things I feel that has helped me with that is making the most of the long weekends. Now, in England, we have a lot of bank holidays. We have 2 in May. We have, now I can't remember the ones in England as much because I'm accustomed to the ones in Canada, but we have 2 in May for sure. We have 1 in August. We have April, which is Easter. And obviously we have Christmas. We have 2 in Christmas, Boxing Day, Christmas Day. We have New Year. In Canada, there are a lot more vacations than the UK. Now, I know over the past 3 years, there have been some increased vacation because of some kind of royal celebrations and things like that. The other thing I wanted to say, which is actually the most important thing that I probably should have said at the beginning of this video, is every province is different. So when we are comparing the United Kingdom to Canada, remember that we're trying to compare the United Kingdom, which is made up of obviously England, Scotland and Wales. We're trying to compare that to Canada or America that have provinces and states. So in Canada, we have Ontario, we have Newfoundland, we have Alberta, we have Nova Scotia, we have Saskatchewan, we have so many different areas. And in Canada, every single province operates as its own mini country. So they have different rules. Even with pharmacy, the pharmacy exams, they have different laws and things like that. So if I move to a different province, I have to take another law exam because every province is different. So vacations are also different, but I'm speaking as someone who lives and works in Ontario, which is probably the most popular province in Canada. Now in Ontario, we have January the 1st, which is like, New Year's Day, we have that off. In February, we have what we call Family Day, so that's a bank holiday. In March, there's no bank holiday, but in April, we normally have Easter, which for most people, they get the Friday off, Easter Friday. Now, if you work for a governmental agency, you will also get the Monday off, which is a bit of a cheat because in England, we get both the Friday and the Monday off. But in Canada, you get the Friday off for everybody. And then Monday is normally people who are working in hospital, working for government agencies. Not many private companies actually allow the Easter Monday off. In the month of May, which is the month we're currently in, we have Victoria Day. Today is Victoria Day, so happy Victoria Day to everybody. So that's normally the third Monday of the month, I believe. And then in June, there isn't one, but in July the 1st, we have Canada Day. In August, we have civic holiday. In September, there's Labor Day. October, there is Thanksgiving. November, there is Remembrance Day. But again, that day is only off for people who are federal workers. So if you work for Health Canada or the Government of Canada, then you'll probably have that day off. And then we have December, which is like Christmas and Boxing Day, all that stuff. So generally, I try to use up my my public holidays, and I try to maximize that and actually use that to take more time off. So for example, it is Victoria Day. So on a usual Victoria Day, I would take that off. I decided to just use today as a rest day, but generally I would be on vacation. I would have taken maybe one day off on the Friday. So then you have Thursday, like you could leave Thursday night to go to Miami or something, and then have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That is basically a 4-day vacation. And if you want, you can add the Tuesday and make it 5. So maximizing the bank holidays and making those into mini vacations is something that many Canadians use to add extra vacation time. For me personally, I have only ever worked one job in Canada that gave me only 12 days vacation. So most of my other jobs have started at a minimum of 3 weeks. So I've never had, aside from that one job, I've never had anything less than 3 weeks vacation. Yes, it's a general consensus that in North America, the vacation time is not as good as the UK, where we have 4 weeks, some people 5 weeks, some people, depending on how long you've been in the NHS, you could have 6 weeks. But again, maximizing the time that you have with bank holidays and adding them onto regular days, but also for a company that really gives you the good time. Some companies are very good with vacation, so I don't think that should be something that puts you off. Next thing, and probably the most important thing that people want to know about, is taxes. How much taxes do we pay? Is it the same as the UK? Now, again, like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I am going to put a table up here and just kind of share. It will kind of give you an idea of taxes. Now, in Canada, I personally think the taxes are just ridiculous. We have such high taxes. Now, the percentage of the tax that you pay depends on the province that you live in. Every province has different percentages in terms of what people pay. There's also federal tax, so taxes that you pay to the Government of Canada, and taxes that you pay to the province of Alberta, the province of Ontario, and so on. For people who are not looking to pay too much taxes, Alberta is probably one of the best provinces because their tax percentages are so low. So your money definitely goes further and you're able to earn a bit more. Again, just depending on what your employer is paying you. Generally, I find that a lot of people do really, really well in the province of Alberta. The living costs are low. Like I said, they don't pay that many taxes. However, you have to deal with the harsh weather. Their winters are quite brutal, especially if you're somebody who's not used to being in winters in general. So those are some of the things that you might want to weigh up. But generally, I would say anywhere you go, you're going to pay taxes. And they have felt a little bit, especially when you're buying things, I think they felt a bit more. One thing I will say though is, I found that when I was living in the UK and working in the UK, my salary always seemed to be super low every month. If you watch my previous video, I spoke about how I worked as essentially a contract pharmacist in hospitals. So that meant that every April or whatever, I would do like a tax. You know, you do your tax stuff with HMRC, and I always seemed to owe HMRC. So I was always paying HMRC back money because they didn't tax me enough and all this kind of stuff. Even though when I was getting my money every month, it seemed like I was losing a lot of money to tax. Now in Canada, we do the same thing where we do our tax every year. Once a year we do our taxes, but every single year I have received money back from the government of Canada. Now, that obviously doesn't happen for everybody, and that depends on how much they're taking from you, depends on your job circumstance, how many jobs have you moved, how much are you paying, all those things kind of come into play. But for me, I haven't had a disadvantage from that. I've actually had a lot of advantages from that on a year-to-year basis in my 3 years of being here. Those are some of the positives that I've kind of experienced whilst being here. It varies for individuals, but I think it's something that you should definitely look at depending on which country you are. If you're in the UK, if you're in Dubai, if you're in Dubai, you probably don't want to move to Canada because they don't pay taxes there. But essentially, what my point is every single country, most countries, have a tax that you must pay. And I think it's just best to kind of weigh up the options. How much are you taking in? How much will you be getting every month or every bi-weekly from your employer? And how much will they tax you, and what will you be left with? The next and most important part is affordability. Home affordability, so important. Oh my gosh. When I think of home affordability and I think of Canada, or North America in general compared to England, I feel like if you're a young professional living in North America, you have a higher chance of being able to afford a home as a first-time buyer than in the UK. Now, people are gonna come at me, people are gonna say, really, blah, blah, blah. You know, in North America, your income is higher. Depending on which area you are, the houses are more affordable. In the UK, especially if you are in that M25 region, London, the outskirts of London, it's gonna be so expensive. The houses in England are super, super expensive right now. And just looking at like an average pharmacist salary versus the ability to afford a home, it's so challenging, especially if trying to afford the home on your own. It can be quite expensive, and there are so many other bills and things that you have to think about and consider. Now, I'm paying £850,000 for a property. I want to be able to have a monthly income where I'm not just spending all my income on a mortgage, but also I want to be able to have the space. So the other thing is, when you're buying a house that's £850,000 in London, how big is the house? Is it spacious? Do you have enough rooms? Do you have enough bathrooms? Do you have enough, do you have garden space? What else does the house have with it? Whereas in North America, you can buy a house, even if it's a bit pricey, you have the space. And that's because in North America, they have the land, whereas in England, we don't have the land to have the big space, especially if you're in London. If you're somewhere maybe up north of England, or you're in Scotland or something, maybe you can afford a home for a much cheaper price. But generally, I think the houses in England are super pricey for what you get, the size you get. Now, in terms of affordability, it varies, like I said. Now, in some parts of America and some parts of Canada, it's super insanely expensive to purchase a home. For example, youngsters or young people, between the ages of 20 and 35 are struggling to purchase homes in Toronto because the houses are so expensive. Again, it's a city, it's, the place everybody wants to be. There's not as much space in the city compared to the outskirts. So yes, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be smaller. I know houses in Toronto are like 1 million, 2 million. I mean, I walked past the house a few weeks ago in Toronto for almost $3 million. Expensive. Super expensive, beautiful home, but super expensive. And it wasn't like a super massive kind of like on your own land. However, if you want to buy a house in Alberta, you can probably get a house for way less cheaper than that, depending on what your expectations are for the home. The same with other provinces. There are different provinces in Canada that will provide you a, much cheaper and much more affordable pricing with even bigger homes, more land and so on. The same goes for America. If you want to live in New York or you want to live in LA, it's probably going to be super expensive in comparison to maybe wanting to live somewhere that's a little bit cheaper, some, states that are a little bit cheaper, and maybe just not in the city. But if you're someone who's looking to live the city life, then maybe leaving London to come to New York or Toronto might not be the best decision for you, because it would just be as expensive in terms of housing. The toughest part about affordability and being able to buy things when you come to a new country is credit scores. In North America, credit score is a huge thing and credit is a big thing. Whereas in England, we don't really pay much attention to the whole credit situation. So for example, before I left the UK when I was 28 years old, and I had never had a credit card in my entire life. If it wasn't for one individual who actually recommended me getting a credit card, I probably would never have had a credit card. I moved, in the January. I lived with family, and I'll talk about that a bit in my next video. That helped me a lot. When it came to moving and living on my own, I had to think about things like getting a car, finding a place to live. And again, like I said in my next video, I'll talk a little bit more about how much money you should bring and the things that you should think about when you are coming in terms of money and your pocket, okay? Like I said, credit scores are a huge thing. When you move to a new country, your credit from the UK does not transfer to credit in Canada or America. You have to start from scratch. I tried to purchase a car, and one of the things I really struggled with was having no credit in a new country and having to build credit. Some of my videos I have mentioned that I came to Canada on a visa called an international experience visa. This is a 2-year working holiday visa, so 2-year working holiday visa. And essentially that meant that when I went to the dealership, they were like, well, you have a 2-year working visa, babes. Like, we're not going to give you a car and then you're going to jet off to the UK and just forget about it. So I had to do a lot of digging, a lot of, finding out how I can do it. And that's one of the things you have to think about, especially if you're coming into Canada without a permanent residency. Nowadays, many people are entering Canada with a permanent residency, which is amazing and it's great and it puts you in a better position. But if you're coming with a working holiday visa or a 2-year short-term visa, you have to think about being able to obtain credit. Having a credit card, that was very, very important because for me, I didn't have a credit card. So what the dealership recommended that I do is that I actually get a credit card, use that for about a few weeks, and then they would be able to have some idea of my credit score, and then I could get a car. I also had to get a lot of other forms and all these things in order for them to actually give me the car. It was so frustrating, super frustrating and really annoying, but those are some of the things that you might want to think about. One of my recommendations actually is for people who come into Canada, say for example, you have a working holiday visa and you come here maybe to do your exams and you go back home if you're from the UK or another country that allows you to do that. Maybe open a credit card whilst you are in Canada and use that. Maybe, get like a SIM or something, like a phone, a phone line, which will help you to build credit. And that way, when it comes to being able to buy a home and things like that, it will be much easier. The final thing that I wanted to talk about in this video is health insurance. A lot of people get worried about what healthcare is like in North America in comparison to the UK. The NHS, which is the National Health Service, is an amazing service that is given to British citizens and nationals or United Kingdom nationals in the UK. And I've worked in the NHS and I think it's amazing. It has its, disadvantages and stuff, and there are things that need to improve, but generally the NHS is a great system which allows me as a British national to go and receive care in a hospital or in a clinic without having to pay a dime. Even down to my prescriptions. If I go to a pharmacy and I have a prescription for amoxicillin or something, I can walk in and pay, £9 now or something? I don't know how much it is now. But back in the day when I was there, it was about £8 something. I can go in and pay just a single fee for whatever medication, whether that medication is a heart medication, a thyroid medication, or general antibiotics. The price essentially remains the same. Now, in North America, it's very different. In Canada, we do have healthcare that's covered by the government or by your provincial government. In every single province, you have what they call a health card. Every single individual will receive a health card, and with that health card, you can go into a doctor's office and receive care from a doctor without paying a dime. Certain things that are not covered, however. I'll tell you a little story. When I came to Canada, I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit, but it took me a long time to basically get my health card. It was a long story getting that, but essentially when I did get my health card, I went to go do some blood work, and one of the things that they told me at the lab is that there are certain blood works that are not covered by the government. For example, you can get regular blood work, but vitamin D levels are not covered by the government, which meant I had to pay to get vitamin D levels. I just think that's ridiculous. But anyways, that's how it works. So there's certain things that are not covered by the government, and majority of the things, kind of the general, things or the general health areas are covered by the government, but there are some things that you might have to pay a little extra for. The same goes with medications. With medications, patients pay not a single fee, but they actually pay for the medication. So I share a lot about this on my Instagram. So if you're not following me on Instagram, I think you need to jump on that and really go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I talk a little bit about how much things cost. So for example, if you're on an inhaler and you're somebody who you don't have a job, you don't work for any company, you have no, coverage or insurance from your work, you will pay a full fee for that inhaler, including the pharmacist dispensing fee and other things. Whereas if you're someone who's employed and your employer gives you coverage, health coverage, you normally have like a card and you bring it into the pharmacy, and essentially, some companies cover 80% or 90%, some 50%. So however much your job covers, if the inhaler is $100 and they cover 50%, you will pay $50 and your employer will cover another 50%. Yeah, it's something. But generally that means that people who don't have health insurance through their job and don't have any other insurance will have to pay for medicines on their own. Now, if you don't have health insurance through your work, you are still able to buy insurance yourself, which covers you for different things. Now, insurance varies and it covers many different things. So for example, most employers will give you some form of coverage that covers things like your prescriptions. It will cover dental. So when you go to the dentist, it will cover your dental care, your eye care, some kind of like chiropractor care, massages, naturopath, physio, all those different things. So that's how it varies. In America, I know it's again completely different and a little bit more expensive because almost all of their healthcare is privatized, even to ambulance care, stay in hospital. If you stayed in hospital for a couple of days, you will pay a certain fee, and this varies from state to state. So those are some of the things to think about when you are wanting to move to a new country. What are the pros and cons? Like I said, I find Canada very in between because, like I said, the healthcare is a little bit similar to the UK in the sense that general health is covered. As long as you are, a Canadian permanent resident or you are a Canadian citizen, you have those general benefits. So in my next videos, I'm going to be talking a little bit about how much money you should bring into Canada and also having conversations about moving to Canada with a family. Now, all of this is still relating to you being a pharmacist or a pharmacy professional moving into the country and some of the things that you have to think about. It's very, very important for us to discuss these things. Really vital. So if you do want to stay tuned and you want to hear more about this, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you follow me on Instagram so that you know when the next video is coming out. A bonus point that I did want to mention and talk about specifically for pharmacists is thinking about location. So when I was doing my pharmacy exams, like I said, I was doing them and working and living in the UK still. When it was time for me to get onto the register as a pharmacist here in Ontario, I struggled a lot because my home address was still in England. Now, the College of Pharmacy actually want to see your visa. They want you to send a copy of your visa so they know that you are actually allowed to work in Canada. A question I get all the time is, can I apply for jobs whilst I'm living in England? Well, if the employer sees on your resume that your address is still the UK, they might be hesitant because remember, they're probably thinking, this person's in the UK, do they have the right to live and work in Canada? If they don't, does that mean I, as the employer, have to sponsor them to come to Canada? So you want to apply for a job from the UK, that's fine. But those are some of the questions the employers are going to be asking themselves. So you might want to actually get yourself in Canada first. That was a question many people asked me when I was moving. Many people were saying, oh, do you have a job already? Blah, blah, blah. And it might work for different professions, but for pharmacy specifically, in order for you to even get onto the register, you have to have a Canadian address. You also have to have a visa or some form of proof that you are able to work legally in Canada. Otherwise, you will not get onto that register. Now, there are different jobs in different sectors where they do want to sponsor individuals to come to other countries. That's very different. But one of the questions they will ask in many job applications is, do you have the right to live and work in this country? Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you stay tuned, tell a friend to tell a friend, subscribe, and send in your questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions in videos. So please send in your questions. Make sure that you're subscribed. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and on TikTok and on Twitter as well.